This is the 8-9 combo. This is the test match post-mortem. And this is a couple of moments. Insert clip here. Yes, two really big moments there. Malcolm Marks' 74th minute try in Cape Town to wrap up the Freedom Cup for South Africa. And Juan Cruz Malia's try in the 72nd minute in Santa Fe to properly finish off the Wallabies. There, I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones. And, mate, as our podcast listeners have just heard there, two very contrasting games in round 4 of the Rugby Championship this week. The Pumas scored 3 more tries after that try of Malia's in the 72nd minute.
Well, what a horror show. Yo, how's it? We had a synchronized celebration a week ago, and now really polarities. Sorry, mate. Yeah,
poles apart is probably the way to get into it. And we are back with our initial prognosis of what we've just seen in Cape Town a little earlier tonight, this morning, depending on where you are, and in Santa Fe just now as well. And we are really pleased to be brought to you across the Rugby Championship by Chasing the Sun 2, the wonderful 5-part all-access series documenting the Springboks' journey to their memorable 2023 Rugby World Cup win, and which is coming soon to RugbyPass TV worldwide. So, mate, let's get into this. The Boks beat New Zealand 18-12 in Cape Town after New Zealand led 9-3 at halftime, and Argentina 67 have beaten Australia 27 in Santa Fe. It's a record score for Argentina. I think it's a record loss in Wallabies history. It was ugly on a number of fronts. Let's try and get into this with the 5-word headline, and I've got a sneak suspicion you're going to take this out because I've not got much at this point.
Well, I'll go headline for each one. Back to square one, Joe, for the later game. And for the first one, I would say Cape Town goes all green. There's a long history of huge contingent of all Black fans, and they were noticeably minimized this time around. It seemed like Cape Town has established itself as a new fortress. 4 out of 5, the only loss being against the Lions, and it was a proper, good, smart, boisterous crowd. On the other hand, for Joe and the Wallabies, there were so many good feelings, good vibes. It felt like we were all just opening up new buckets of good news and prospects. And then suddenly, and maybe not suddenly, but just this right now, it just feels like there's a whole lot to work on, because even though it's just one loss, I guess in some ways, it's also such a huge loss. Was that the most? Was that the biggest?
Yeah, I believe so.
Loss? Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes.
The Wallabies, we'll switch on to the Boks New Zealand. We'll cover that first. But the Wallabies led 20-3 after half an hour.
Wow.
And it flipped on that. It's a really good. I'm just going to concede the headline. I'm just not going to bother because it's hard to come back from that. But really impressive win from the Boks in Cape Town, the 4th straight now against New Zealand for the first time since 1949. I think I heard Matt Pearce saying on Supersport coverage, which is. That's becoming an imposing record now, isn't it?
And back in those times, I think there was some time between 36 and 49. They didn't play that often. So it wasn't really the same cast of characters. This is really, this is something that's becoming to be a thing.
Yes.
And I think I've heard people say within the camp that it's really important for young players to grow up thinking it's not weird to beat New Zealand. And so I think that's part of the takeaway here is, young players, 22 years old, 21 years old, are getting the feeling of it's not that weird. You can do it.
Yeah. What are you talking about? I've never lost to New Zealand.
And then the All Blacks, on the other hand, there's actually quite a few players there that are probably scratching their head and saying, what do we change? What do we do? It was a fascinating moment before the match. We were in there pretty early and got to see Razor and Rossi kind of eyeing each other. They're about 40 meters apart. Rossi was just kind of bouncing the ball, looking over at Razor. Razor's in his suit and his black tie and white shirt, and they just kind of stopped, and they both stared at each other. They didn't wave, they didn't acknowledge each other. And I was just thinking, would love to know what they're thinking right now. But fascinating duel.
Is there an element of back to square one for Scott Robertson now as well? Like how much of this last 2 weeks will he really review hard?
Yeah, maybe the headline is applicable to both, because in some ways Razor made a few changes, and then those were the changes that I don't think came off. So Will Jordan was not, I don't know, he was not magisterial at the back. It didn't seem like Silver Reese Talea combination did well at all.
No,
they made several errors. I think Blackadder was out for injury, but Wallace Atiti didn't look necessarily up to the task as well. And then, I just enjoyed it. I thought maybe at 9 it looked a bit scrappy as well. So maybe all the changes he made didn't really come off. And then when he had his own version of the bomb squad, well, as you said, the score flipped from 9-3 down to 18-12. So you wonder a little bit where Razor goes with adjustments now for the Bledisloe.
Yeah, and I'm sure there will be some. It really felt like, they swapped penalties after half time. Villiers gets that yellow card. What's that? That's the 63rd minute, I think it is. Then McKenzie missed a penalty. Feinberg and Gomazulu missed a penalty. McKenzie missed another one in the 72nd minute. And then Tyrell Lomax cops the yellow card. And that felt like a bit of a moment. And, Mark scored shortly after that, peeling off the maul. And that was enough in the end.
And just don't forget, Chesson Colby missed his obligatory drop goal.
Missed the drop goal attempt there, yes.
Yeah. Right now, I think he's about 7 attempts and never got one.
None from 7? That's more than fair. What was the... Did it feel in the moment that Lomax went off? Did it feel like there in the stadium in Cape Town that this was it? This is where it comes from.
For me, it was literally like a reverse image of 2015 semi-final in Twickenham, where the score was very close and theoretically the Boks could have come back and won it, but I never felt like we were going to, and I felt like this time around was the same. Yes, that helped the cause for Lomax to go off, but I just never felt like the All Blacks had a try in them in that final 10 minutes. They just didn't seem to have the punch. Every time they made a mini break, there was someone there. It didn't look like there was the All Blacks of old, some sort of internal wizardry that would make a try out of nothing. It felt like it's going to be a hard slog. So it felt comfortable-ish in the end, even though, of course, you never know with the All Blacks. I would say also just the whole vibe was so happy. I think, the thing is, Cape Town does happy better than anyone else in South Africa of all the cities. And when you go to the washroom in Cape Town, there's just a guy standing next to you going, "Hey, brother, you got a joint?" I mean, it's just really pleasantries passed between you. But it's overall a very smart crowd, and I was seated not very far away from Dion Fourie of World Cup fame, and it was just interesting to see his reactions, just 1 year removed, cheering on his friends, his brothers. It did feel like it doesn't have the same volume as Ellis Park. There's not that sort of cacophonous feel, but it really feels like a home. And the players went around and around the stadium. And I mean, 30 minutes post final hooter, no one had left. I mean, literally everyone was still there. I could not find an empty seat. It was in the end, I think it was one of those victories where one team got to say to the other team, "We really have your number right now. Doesn't mean forever, but right now we have the answers for you." And Razor has to go back and think again.
Glad we weren't recording straight after the Cape Town game then. Might have made it difficult. We've sort of covered what worked, what didn't work. Who learnt what from these South African New Zealand games?
Yeah, so I think, set piece wise, Razor's got plenty to work with. It is a little bit of a wonderment, I suppose, that the Blues were the class team I thought they were the second best team in the world as a club, and yet they didn't really have a lot of representation in the All Black pack. And then I think maybe there was too much of the same. Maybe Razor will go away and realize that he's got to go ahead and make changes. There just has to be some new blood. Maybe the Jordy Rico midfield isn't always firing. Perhaps there has to be a different 10. These are all soul-searching moments, and probably he sits down with all of his coaches, and they sit there and they get really analytical about it. Their mall defense works still, I think. There were elements. I think their scrum, even though it creaked a little bit, and I thought that France Malherbe did have the measure up to Mighty Williams in the end. It wasn't categorical.
It intrigued me that both Lomax and Williams went as deep as they did. Like, Williams didn't get replaced till the 68th or 9th minute, and Lomax was still going when he got the yellow card, obviously. So that's long in a game for two starting props. So I wonder about that. What about South Africa? What have they learned in the last fortnight?
Yeah, so I think there are a number of things. I think mostly what Rossi and his coaches were learning was about aptitude, test match temperament, putting people under severe pressure. And I think for the most part, those were, passing grades. There were a few people that maybe took a step back. Elrich Lowe, a guy like Elrich Lowe was a guy who wasn't really embedded in the box setup a year ago, and now he's firmly embedded. I think clearly the way to use Kwagga Smith is only in the Bob squad. He's not a starter. So even those kind of just minor conclusions probably help.
You know what sort of stood out to me a little bit is that he might have actually just got a reminder that, sometimes 5-3 actually works on the bench. Sometimes you need it. And I don't say that disparagingly, but, LaRue copying that yellow card and meant that, they weren't too disadvantaged for that 10 minutes. And then when they did shuffle things around, the changes that they made sort of made sense. They shuffled Creel to the wing again. If they're going, they could time their moment when Feinberg and Gorgonzola comes on for Pollard. 6-2 doesn't necessarily give you that allowance. And so I wonder whether that might be something to consider going forward. Sorry.
Yeah, I think there might be some analysis on how much it's been used. Because right now I'm wondering, how many times have we actually used 7-1 and 6-2 and 5-3? It might be some analyst out there might already have those stats together and know that it's really third. I know Rusty wants one thing. He wants unpredictability, and I think he's successfully made opposing coaches be a little bit on edge about what to do.
It wouldn't be a third. Like 7-1's been used maybe twice in the last 12 months. So it wouldn't be a third. But 6-2, 5-3 might be reasonably even split. Argentina were always going to bounce back from last week. And look, the first thing I'll say about the game in Santa Fe is what a difference a dry track and blue skies made.
Yeah. And to be fair to you guys, I mean, I was thinking, I was making notes. Some of the early play was some of the best I've seen from the Wallabies.
It looked fantastic. When they got out,
what an incredible try that they had, where it was support. Jorgensen down the side, Kellaway free, finishes, relentlessness, good cleaning. I thought, well, okay, here we go. Yeah. There was a real clinical element to them in that first half an hour, and it was a well-deserved 20-3 lead at that stage. That absolutely told the story of the game to that point. And then, Argentina had a try disallowed in there, so they were certainly eking their way into the contest. But to get back to 20-17 at halftime, Australia led narrowly. Even at that point, it wasn't
it didn't feel like a portal into what was going to come after halftime.
What do you think happened? Because I have to admit that I was in the middle of Jägermeisters when a lot of this happened.
I might have wished I was as well. It's really hard to pin it down on anything because like it took 8 or 9 minutes for them to score in the second half, Argentina, but then another 10 minutes after that, and so it's on the hour it's 31-20. They kicked another penalty at 63 minutes, if you like, but they score 5 tries from there. So
I'm gonna have to watch this thing again because there's something that doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. I just have never seen that much of a scoring blitz come from. It didn't seem like they were that ascendant, and then suddenly I just kept thinking they cannot stop scoring.
No, it was like they were on the back foot in the first half an hour, and they were being pretty well beaten, as we've said, and then suddenly they were just not just dominant, but completely one way. And it probably coincides with the bench. I don't think there'll be many of the Australian bench will particularly enjoy the review this week because I got to say there was some passengers. There was some real passengers in and across the board. Blokes just rushing up into defence, not even getting a touch on anyone, and then just watching the play go past. And that happened in several tries. It's going to be really hard to pinpoint this. And so, if we go straight to who learned what from this game, I think the big thing for Joe Schmidt is that he's now learnt firsthand that the highs and lows of coaching the Wallabies is as extreme as it gets. And he's experienced that within 7 days of each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking what they learned, the Wallabies, would have been that Argentina is a dangerous beast on their own territory. When, I don't know, I said embarrassed to Cello Bosch, and he didn't like that term. But I felt like there was a bit of that, kind of just, don't push us around on our own turf.
Yeah.
And then it continued for the first, like you said, 23, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. And so then I thought, wow, this is really kind of an unraveling of the Pumas. And I don't know if I've seen, in a 50-minute span between two top-tier teams, that type of explosion. It was actually one of, almost I have to go back. I said, I know this is about thoughtless, brainless, post-mortem reactions, but I'd almost have to sit down and go, what was the defensive scheme? Who dropped off? Were people in the wrong place? I don't know how many tries just seemed to leak.
Yeah. I said in our chat group, Laurie Fisher's going to be running defensive remedial classes for the next 2 weeks and he's going to have to because the defensive system just literally disintegrated in that last 20 minutes. And again, I don't know what the catalyst for that was. But something, and I don't know whether it was one of the replacement changes or what. I don't think you could put it down to one player not being there, but it just fell apart.
The cameraman had an extreme view of the nostrils of Jeff Parling for some reason, and then right behind him, Laurie Fisher was in all of his emotive, angst, and it just at some point he wasn't even pounding the table anymore. Our Lord Laurie Fisher, man, our friend, he was just resigned to his fate. And Jeff Parling has those sad northern eyes. And he was just kind of going, what's happening? And I didn't even know where they start. I don't know what they do when they go back to the room, like tomorrow sit down and just look at each other and say, what do we do? What do we fix? Because the Bledisloe is coming.
It'd be interesting to know how long after full time do the coaches watch that game again?
That would be a hard watch. I would love the first 30 minutes and then go to the loo. It's actually one of those things I've never really seen. But so the Pumas have that in them. There's a part of Argentina, and I think Marcelo referred to this, is this kind of this passionate, emotive, ability to just be brilliant. But it all just came together. I will say this, I kind of felt happy for them in some ways, because even though, I watch Australian rugby and I'm much more alive with Australian rugby and I have so much more friends in Australian rugby, it is also fun to see a team like Argentina in full pomp. I mean, if you were just a neutral and you watched it, you would say, "Oh, that was some enticing rugby."
And they scored some absolutely amazing tries. The Pumas, to be full credit to them. They scored some tries where you just thought, how has that pass stuck? Like, how have they managed to make that? How have they suddenly just launched into attack where it was pretty much man on man, yet suddenly by the time the ball got wide, it was 3-on-1? Like, how have they managed to manipulate the situation to make that? It was really impressive to watch, I've got to say.
There's one bright spot. Ben Donaldson managed to kick a goal on exactly the shot clock. The shot clock was expiring exactly when he hit the ball. It was actually quite magical.
That's the saving grace for the game, is it? That's the one little highlight. Yeah. Look, it will be really interesting to see now what the thinking is, because as you say, the first Bledisloe test is less than 2 weeks away now. And it's the perfect storm for now for Joe Schmidt and the Wallabies. They're going to be coming up against a New Zealand team that's been humbled twice in South Africa, and a Wallabies team coming off the back of a record loss.
Yeah, I suspect it's mostly mentals. The psychological repair.
Yeah, I hope so.
There has to be. Like, literally, I think people have to sit around in a closed room, no phones, confidentiality, and really dish with each other, like, come clean. And I think men have to stand up in front of everyone and say, I take responsibility. Because there probably are some egregious errors that you and I are not thinking about right now. It's hard to watch a match like that. You almost don't want to watch it. But there's probably some terrible defensive setup, lineup problems and schemes, and people just didn't do their job. And also what's weird about it is that doesn't usually come post, being up by 23. It's just bizarre to fold. You think you could go to a kicking game and just pin them down and eke out, a 23-20 victory or something. It just doesn't, it won't do at Test rugby to be up 20-3 and then lose by that much.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hell of a swing, isn't it? To be down by 20-3 and to score 57 points from that game to win and concede one try. It's more than that. It's 64 points. I've dropped them short. I've left a try off. Yeah. No, it's back to square one is just such an appropriate headline for this, because it does cover both games. And it's just really interesting. It's just been a really, really interesting weekend of rugby, hasn't it?
It's too soon for Wallaby fans to have to go through this trauma again. It's too soon. I think you thought you'd turn the corner a little bit, and then now you're right back at the starting gate.
And that's the worrying point now, where the Wallabies are right back at the starting gate, and there's 2 Bledisloe tests to come. And we've been through this before to know what might happen here. So it's it's
very, very grumpy All Blacks coming to see you. You and I.
No doubt. That's the big takeaway of it. But mate, I think we might call that a wrap then on another Rugby Championship edition of the Test Match post-mortem, and with that, another service, albeit a slightly somber service to finish on, to Test Rugby is finished. How have you enjoyed your 10 days in South Africa?
Oh, what a beautiful time. And I would say this week in particular, in Cape Town, and then maybe today. Today was one of the great days of my life, actually. It started out well and it kept going better. So sorry, Wallaby fans, about the Wallaby demise against Argentina. But I do think it's important in rugby to see the value of a like that. All day long, the city was buzzing. There was great rivalry, chat going on back and forth. But what a beautiful weather day. And rugby can be beautiful when it's high scoring, and it can also be incredibly compelling in that game. I think Jeff Parks put it best, or maybe it was you in our chat group, about every single moment was under pressure. Like every single rock, every single tackle, every single, and that there's something very compelling about that.
Yeah, both games kicking off in sunlight. I think there's something in that as well, and maybe that's another chat for another day. But tell us what you think at the 8-9 Combo on all the socials, or leave your thoughts in the comments section right here on the 8-9 YouTube channel, or you can hit Harry and I up on the socials in our usual places as well. Make sure you are following and subscribing on all the pod platforms and on YouTube and everything like that, and you'll make sure that you get everything as soon as it drops. And head to RugbyPass.tv as well, where you can see the 2019 series of Chasing the Sun right now, and with the 2023 series Chasing the Sun 2 coming up soon. Sign up for free and watch it wherever you are in the rugby world. This is the test match post-mortem from the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realise you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay, he's Harry Jones, and we'll be back in your ears with New Zealand rugby writer and author Jamie Wall this week.
Come celebrate or mourn with us.
I don't like mourning.
No.